Hi, I'm Jonathan J, and welcome to dealmakers.co.uk, the place to find out all about buying a business. Now, on today's interview, I want you to meet an accountant who speaks plain English. Yes, an accountant who can tell you exactly how due diligence is done when you buy a business. It's absolutely fascinating. You're going to love it. So, Johan, you are the managing director of OnPoint Accounting, and your colleague Martin is on my current mastermind program. And I think you've met a few of my other clients along the way as well. How have you been helping those clients? And tell us a little bit about what you do at your accounting firm.
Cool. Yeah. So I've met quite a few of your clients over the last 2 years. Many of them are just initial phone calls. We help them just sense check the business that they're looking at acquiring. They come to us saying, these are the accounts, look, it's nice and profitable. And then we go and look at, we go into the balance sheets and it might be profitable, but profit is a figure that can be moved on paper. What's more important is how's the cash flow. Now you've got a load of loans in there, credit cards in there, for example, hire purchases. How does that all impact on the cash flow? And if the cash flow is not right, the deal just can't go ahead, because if it's not going to support the day-to-day running now, how's it going to support the deferred income?
Exactly.
So we spend quite a lot of time just getting people to think more around cash flow. Cash flow is the blood of business over a profit figure, and profit and loss and balance sheets. Clever accountants out there will do clever things.
Absolutely.
So what's actually in the bank account, they can't really do much about that. That's what you need to run the business. It's what you're going to potentially use as initial consideration. It's what's going to keep the business running as you grow and invest in that business. So we get them thinking more about the cash flow and how they're going to run the business on a day-to-day basis, rather than it's got a profit. This is the multiplier. I'm going to make this offer.
Sure. And the profit, as you say, is it's just something that's written down. It doesn't necessarily translate into cash, and you need cash to pay the bills and yourself and the vendor.
Yeah.
So if we were to say, what are the top three things that you look at the very first time someone presents you with a set of accounts, what would those top three things be?
We always check the bank account first. Is there cash in there to help them structure a deal? Is there cash in there that's going to help them, give them some due initial consideration to the old owners? Then we look at how much debt is there, how much work in progress is there, how much stock is there. Can that help negotiate down the initial consideration? Is it actually detrimental to the business? We've got one client that we were looking at, and the debt was so high, and that was on a 12-month-old set of accounts. And by the time we got even more up-to-date data, the business just wasn't feasible. And we just said, look, the easiest way to do this is actually get them to go to the administrators and pre-package it for you. Because it's the only way you could have financed that. So we look at the bank balance, then we look at all the debts, etc., and the creditors, and then after that we'll have a look at the profit and loss, and we'll see kind of where are we spending this money that's going in and out on a daily basis. Is there potentially some reorganizations that can happen within the business, whether that's employees, supplier contracts, credit terms, refinancing of the debts? Because what a lot of people don't realize about accountants is, especially general accounting firms, we deal with a lot of people, with a lot of clients in a lot of different industries. And in my opinion, we're at the heart of this network of businesses where we can take all the best learnings and help share that best case scenario and that best learning across the rest of our clients. So we've got one client that's done a fantastic job at saving money on her electric bills recently. So we're just saying, look, we've got one client, she's got a smart meter, all of a sudden she's got all this visibility of her usage. She now turns off her coffee machine at night, and that's saving her £4 a day.
Right. Yeah.
But it's taking those learnings.
And when you do 100 things like that, it starts to add up, and it can move a business from doing okay to doing quite well.
Exactly. So when someone comes to me and looking to buy business in hospitality, and they've got this set of accounts, I don't just have to sit there and go, well, you're going to have to replace that owner, you're going to have to bring in a manager and stuff. But I can go, well, that utility consumption seems quite high. We could probably see that drop by this. So we can give them a much more realistic overview of what could happen in the next year to 2 years for them if they follow that advice.
And I think you're what you've just said is so practical, because that cash flow is way more critical than profit, because you can be making a profit, but your cash flow can be shot to pieces because clients pay late, or that there's no payment schedule, they're out of terms, they pay in arrears rather than in advance, and all of those different things can take a perfectly sound, profitable business on paper, but it can run out of cash, especially if your sales drop through some sort of seasonal fluctuation, for example.
Exactly. Yes, this business is profitable, but is it only actually really profitable 2 months of the year and really struggles for the 10 months? Is that the case? So the new owner needs to be aware of that. And that's why we always look at a cash flow rather than and we like the breakdown of the monthly management reports over just a set of annual accounts.
Yes.
That are normally 9 months out of date before they've been used for anything. So
how do you deal with vendors of businesses who don't have any up-to-date information and blame it on their accountant for not having that up-to-date information, but they still want to sell the business in the next 4 weeks?
I mean, it's really tough. Is it the accountant's fault? I think to a certain degree it is, because a lot of accounting firms aren't moving with the times. For example, all of our clients are on QuickBooks or Xero, full stop. We don't use Sage. We don't have to rely on a USB stick being posted with a backup of some accounts before we can do any work. If you're looking to sell your business, you want to have instant accessible financial data, and you want it to be live so you can get the best value for your business. Because the accounts that are 2 or 3 months old or up to 12 months old may not be the true reflection of where your business is now. And actually, if you had true, accurate figures available up till yesterday, then actually that information may put your business as a vendor in a more valuable position, because it's done better since the last set of accounts, and you're not showing that. So I think there is a joint responsibility between the accountants and business owners to have modern accounting systems and processes.
Yes.
And that is one of the things we always encourage any of our clients that come through due diligence with us. If they are taking over a business that have got desktop-based softwares, we're always encouraging them. The first thing you do is you rip out that system and you put in cloud-based, because you've got real live time information
that everyone can share.
It's completely shareable. So, example of due diligence between two companies. One's got QuickBooks, for argument's sake. One's got Sage on the desktop. For me to do due diligence on the one with Sage, I need to contact the accountant, ask him for a load of reports. I go through those reports. I then have to ask him a series of questions. I need to have drill down sent over to me. It takes weeks. Give me a company that's using QuickBooks or Xero. I can ask the accountant to give me a read-only login. I can have due diligence done in 2 or 3 days, because I'm not having to go backwards and forwards. So if you're a vendor and you're trying to sell your business, you need to start planning ahead. So if you know in the next year you want to sell your business, talk to your accountant about getting cloud systems. If they're dead set against it, then is it worth moving accountants when you're wanting to sell within a year? Probably not. But if they're dead set against cloud, then talk to them about how you can make sure you've got accurate management reports up to the end of every month. and what's that process involved? What do you need to give to your accountant, and what turnaround times can you expect from them? Because then you can go into any acquisition deal talks with relevant information and say, look, it's the 15th of August, but this is my management accounts up to the 31st of July. This is current, this is right. Let's talk about this, rather than looking at my accounts that were 8 months ago.
Yeah. The other thing that often happens is that the whole diligence process takes so long. By the time it looks like you're getting near to the end, another quarter has passed. So the buyer or the seller wants it needs to provide another quarter of management accounts. So if you're working massively in arrears, it really I don't know. You're constantly chasing your tail. Where if you're doing it the way that you describe, where everything's in real time and it's up to date, and those accounts are the bank is being reconciled every week or even every day, then you actually get to a point where you can work in real time.
Exactly, and as you said, so we now find this thing that slows the due diligence process down is lawyers normally. They move at their own pace. There is no egging them on to go faster. They are just lawyer paced. And then the second bit that slows things down is the vendor or the acquirer. They're not quite got the pain point to the point that you need them to have. So the 2 deals I've done within 10 working days of heads of terms to completion and handover of.
So these are acquisitions that you've done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've done 2 acquisitions myself, and, so literally one, we spoke about it for the first time around the 14th of July, and we completed and took over on the 1st of August because cloud accounting software, we kept it simple. So the client didn't want a solicitor, and we had our terms and conditions already. So it can be really quick. Mm-hmm. But if you've got a slow solicitor and you've got a slow vendor or a slow acquirer, then don't start the financial due diligence until you are comfortable that you are within a month of the close of the business, of the deal. Because if you get me to come in and do your due diligence today, but you don't actually do the deal until the 1st of January, I'm going to have to do it again because so much has changed in that time. They could have borrowed money, they could have emptied the bank accounts, there could be all sorts going on.
Sorry for interrupting your video, but I wanted to introduce you to a great lawyer in the UK who can get your deals done for you. He's worked for 50 of my mastermind clients in the last few months alone. His name is John Andrews, and I've got his details right here in my little black book of contacts. You can phone him on 0345 241 2494, or you can email him on johnandrews.deallawyer@jmw.co.uk. If you want someone who can get a deal done, he is your guy. So let's get back to the video. I'll tell you a process that I've used, I used just recently, this year in fact, was engaging one of the large accountancy firms, Grant Thornton in this case, to do vendor due diligence. So they provided us with a pack that allowed us to approach, you could use it to raise money as well as to sell a business. And that gives the potential lender or the potential acquirer a sense of comfort around the figures at a level of detail that internally we would not have been able to provide.
Yep.
Yeah, so all the forecasting in there, everything that someone would look for. Now, to be fair, it cost an arm and a leg, but it did its job.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing we found is that's made our due diligence process is a lot quicker. If you're planning on raising finance on this company that you're going to buy, so you can finance the deal, then get the lenders to do most of your financial due diligence. They're going to make sure what's affordable and not. They're going to do all the credit checks and stuff. So actually, if they've already signed it off and given you an offer, that gives me a load of confidence that actually these books are pretty bulletproof. And it makes our job a lot easier, and it can speed up the process a lot faster.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes people say to me, "Look, if I use asset finance to buy the business or some sort of debt against the debtor book, if I raise money against the debtor book, how do I know that the business can afford it?" And I say, "Well, they wouldn't lend it to you unless the business could afford it. That's their
Exactly.
job to figure out that it is affordable to the business."
Yeah, exactly. They're going to do a lot of the work for you. Now, commercial finance, it's nowhere near as cheap and friendly as the personal finance world is. They're going to do. Some of them will charge you commercial consulting fees. Some of them are then going to charge you a percentage of the money you've borrowed. Then they're going to get a kickback from the bank as well for putting the business their way. It's a good industry to be in if you can be. But if you're going to pay them that kind of money, then why do everything twice? Let them do that financial due diligence. Make sure it's affordable,
Sure.
as a business model, and then we can come in and type the loose ends for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you deal from an accountant's perspective with the owner of a business who says that they have assets, fixed assets of a certain value, they've got stock of a certain value, and they want 100% of that value right here, right now, otherwise they're not doing the deal?
I mean, I tend to leave it in the acquirer's hands to decide whether that's what they're going to do or not. If they can afford it, that's their choice. But I would always say, look, you're going to go in there, you're going to find a dent on that car, which means it's not going to actually be as valuable as possible as it should be on the books. And ultimately, the way we value things in the accounting world, it's a very old-fashioned, centuries-old process with assets and depreciation. It used to be I would buy a PC and that would go on my, that would go on my as one of my assets, and that would sit on my balance sheet and depreciate over 5 years. If you go out as a graphic designer and buy a PC today, you and I know you're probably going to sell that PC within a year or scrap it because it's not powerful enough anymore to do what you need to do. So is that an asset to your business or is it just an expense? Same with photographers and their SLR cameras, etc. Assets and depreciation have become a real grey space. So I don't normally count cameras and computers and laptops as assets because they normally don't last more than a year. And if you try to sell them after that year, they're probably pretty worthless. Whereas there would be a huge balance on the asset sheet if you look at the value through depreciation method. So I would always recommend that the owner, the acquirer, goes in and views that stock. Is it in date? Is it in good condition? Is it what they say it is? And does it have the value they say it actually has? And the same with the assets. And again, if you're getting asset finance, they are really good at checking the value of any assets that you're going to try and finance.
Absolutely,
so it's a really good due diligence stage for you to do. If you're going to go into a company that's got a fleet of vehicles, then get your asset finance people to go and have a look at it and see what they come back with as an offer, because they're going to validate the value of those assets beyond your balance sheet that you're looking at from the vendor.
Yeah, because they understand the resale value, which of course is their security should the loan default. So
exactly.
So another thing that accountants do is that they put as much as they can into the asset register in order to increase the profit.
Yep.
So they capitalize it rather than expense it. So you've got this growing asset list and a growing profit alongside it. And I think that can sometimes make a business look better than it truly is, because if, as you just said, if you expense those items, it would reduce the profit anyway.
Exactly. I've looked at companies that have got USB sticks worth 20 quid sat as an asset on their balance sheet. And you just think, why? That's just, but yeah. And that brings me back to that first point of accountants can do all sorts of weird and wonderful things that are completely legal and above board to enhance your profit if you're trying to sell. And it's very obvious to other accountants when we look at those accounts that this has been fattened up for selling. Whereas normally you probably wouldn't have declared that tax, that profit to the HMRC, and you wouldn't have been prepared to pay that amount of tax if you weren't looking to sell. So that's why we always go back to that cash flow. Like, yes, great, you've got assets. Yes, they need to be double checked for value and stuff, but ultimately the true asset is the money in the bank. Mm-hmm. That can't be moved around. And yeah, that's why we always favour the cash flow situation over the profit number on a set of accounts.
So one question I get asked a lot in our link, we've got a private LinkedIn group for people on the mastermind, is they've found a business, and maybe there's an agreement to buy that business at a price that's equal to 3.5, 4 times pre-tax profit, so effectively earnings. And then the seller drops the bombshell that they want an additional £500,000 for the assets. Now, the argument is typically, well, if you took those assets away and so actually we don't really want those, we just want everything apart from the assets, is there actually a business there? Because the assets allow the business to operate and produce the profit, and you can't have one without the other. Now, that's my very sort of non-technical, non-accountant way of describing it. So how would you describe that better so everyone understands it clearer?
I think you're completely right the way you have explained it. I mean, I always try and put everything into plain English for anyone, just because I don't think accountancy is a black magic. I don't think we need to talk in jargon and try and spellbound our clients into thinking we are the only people that can understand this. Ultimately, it's their business. They need to understand their finances. But it's as you said, that's all well and good. They want $500,000 for their assets, and the assets represent that on the balance sheet. That's fine. As the acquirer, you need to decide, have I already got some of those assets in my other businesses? So do I actually need their assets? Do I value their assets greater than the balance sheet says? So maybe they've got an all singing, dancing printing machine that you've not got, and that actually adds a huge amount of value to your other businesses. In which case, then you need to come up with the value in your mind of what you're prepared to pay for. And if you've not got any assets, or it's a whole new business and industry to you, and you've never brought any of those assets before, do you need those assets, as you said, to run the business? Because if you do, you need to find a happy point for you and the vendor to buy those assets from them. Then are the assets really tired? Actually, would you be better off in the long run saying, you know what, keep your assets, I'm going to buy new, because they're going to last longer, the maintenance cost is going to be cheaper, the running costs are cheaper in the utilities because they're more environmentally sound these days than they used to be. Mm-hmm. There's lots of varying factors you just need to take into account, and that's why it's really important to have an accountant that understands the concept of business. So like we dealt with quite a few people that have come from bigger firms where the due diligence case has gone to their team, and it's a team of people that have come from school, college, university into employment. And that's great. Their qualifications are fantastic. They've studied hard to get that. They know all the technical stuff. They know the jargon. They know the numbers, and they can see the patterns. But they've not got any business experience. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that will always put them at a loss, really, because they can't empathise with the business owner. Like, the first thing I do when I look at it is I go, would I buy this business myself? Is it too risky for me? And if it is, I'll tell them. I said, look, just so you're aware, as a business owner, this is above my risk level. But I'm happy, if you're happy with the risk, I'm happy to help you. And you can't get that from every accountant you work with. So finding accountants that understand and can emphasize with being a business owner is really important.
Yeah, interesting. It depends also where your risk profile sits, doesn't it? You know, you have some people who are willing to take a punt on something, and they're willing to lose the money. And you should never invest money that you're not prepared to lose, because you never know what's around the corner. And are willing to take more of a chance. I mean, the guidance that I always give people is that your first business should be solid and profitable, which probably means it's quite a boring business. It's not it's not an app for example, which
Yeah.
may be a multi-million-pound success story, or it may be a complete disaster. It's something like commercial cleaning, or a dental practice, or something that has a reliable history that isn't likely to change with a new owner. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
Completely agree. You want either something with reoccurring income,
Yes.
anything with a subscription model. I love the subscription model. I think any business in theory can offer a subscription. I've got a client who made chocolate brownies and Christmas cakes. She did all right. December was her best time, but her brownie orders throughout the year were a bit hit and miss. We encouraged her to do a subscription model where the subscribers get a box of brownies in the post every month. She's 3-4 times increased her business in the space of a year because of it. So anything with good, reliable, reoccurring income is fantastic, because you can plan your cash flow. And when you can plan your cash flow, you can plan your investment, you can plan your growth. It's all brilliant stuff to do. If you're going to go in to stuff where there's maybe not reoccurring business, then you want to go in and make sure you've got the contacts in the industry. So, for example, if you're going to go into haulage, who are the current contracts with? Now, is that contract with that company because they're mates and they've been there for 20 years, and actually will that contract move? Or is that contract there because you do a really good job with, I don't know, Asda, for example, and Asda's not going to move that contract just because there's a new owner. They're going to move it based on service and price. If you're going into a world like energy, for example, then you want to make sure your suppliers are blue chip companies, because that's where you can get your invoice financing. They're also really reliable payers. It's making sure, as you say, the risk is to your own appetite. But I would always encourage your first business to be a steady, consistent performer.
Absolutely. Too many people, I think, look at distressed businesses as the first acquisition because it looks inexpensive. But you always pay some way. You pay with your time, you pay with your energy, and it might be a business that at some point needs money to go into it. So you weren't putting in at the start, but you were putting it in 3 months later. So that the reliable, profitable business is better in so many ways.
Exactly. Yes, you're going to pay a bit more to get it, but it gives you that really strong foundation. So all go into a business that you understand and know, and you've got proven history.
Yes.
Our first acquisition was to buy a firm that was making a loss. It was losing money hand over fist. So we bought it for £1. Within 21 days, it was profitable because it was in the accounting sector. I could easily get rid of a load of the costs because we've already got them covered in our other firm, and I had the expertise to go in and do it and turn it around. If someone brand new went into the accounting industry and brought that business for £1, they might not have been able to do that quick enough.
Yeah, absolutely. A principle that I've been teaching people in Mastermind recently is if that first business is that profitable, solid, reliable business, is to, once you bought it, to raise money against it as quickly as possible.
Exactly.
So either with an overdraft, sometimes you can just get the overdraft online. You don't have to even speak to anyone these days to get an overdraft. Some sort of business loan in there. And I was with a lender just a couple of days ago, and they were very comfortable giving cash flow loans of 2.5 times EBITDA. But as soon as you've got that lending in there, you can use that money for the second acquisition, and then you can do the same with the second acquisition to fund the third. And this sort of momentum that you build up means that you can build your group without any finance coming from you as an individual, but it's actually coming from the businesses that you're buying.
Yeah, completely. And we do the same kind of thing. We look to leverage finance against our current businesses to buy the next one if we need to. And that's again another place where having a proactive accountant really helps. So we work with a company called Swoop, who are a brokerage for accountants who've got access to loads of lenders, loads of different funding types. It means I can just put cases towards them and say, look, clients looking at buying this business, they don't need finance to do the acquisition, but they would be looking to get finance for the next one off this. What kind of things could we look at? Could we expect, and what's the affordability?
Yeah.
And they'll go away and look at that. So you don't have to go to multiple brokers or anything, because your accountant has already got that trusted relationship.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So the question I always ask, Johan, towards the end of these interviews is, people listening to this podcast, thinking about buying a business, they're watching the video, they're thinking, I'm interested enough to watch the video and listen to the podcast, but I haven't actually done anything yet. I haven't made that first step. And usually it's fear of the unknown, isn't it? It's fear of making a mistake. So what sort of advice would you give those people?
I mean, I'll give you an example. I always think, so my advice is take that first step. Get on with it. You've got nothing to lose, everything to gain. If that first step is sending out some letters, it's going to cost you however much it costs you in stampage, paper, printing. But if you don't send out those letters, you'll never know. There's people that were in social network groups that I'm in that were looking at starting their accounting firm 5 years ago when I started mine. They're still looking. They're still finding every excuse in the world to not be ready to do it. I need to write my risk assessment policy. I need to do this. I need to decide on what software I'm going to do for this. I need to build my website. Well, 5 years down the line, I run a group of 6 different accounting brands, and they're still sat there saying they're going to need to do something. If you don't take that first step, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, now that's great advice, and a theme, I think, across so much of the content that I put out about getting over the procrastination, taking the first step. If you do it the right way with the knowledge and the education, then your risk is so minimal, we can eliminate it altogether, and the upside is absolutely huge. It can be a life-changing upside, can't it?
Oh, completely. Do you want to spend an hour sending out some letters? Worst case scenario, nothing comes of it. You think you've wasted an hour. Best case scenario, you land a business that's got £1 million turnover or bigger. That's probably the best hour you've spent of your life.
Exactly. That's a very good way of putting it. What fantastic advice. It's been a really interesting interview and a subject that we don't cover very often, actually, on these interviews. So it's really good to get an accountant's insight into everything. And I'm sure when you do the next acquisition and the next one and the next one, we'll be catching up with you on a future interview as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been great. Thank you.